Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. It is good to be with you. Tuesday, July 11th. Rebecca Johns coming to you live on behalf of the Godly Woman, holistic healthcare, purpose coaching, classes, products to live your great I am life, and specifically reaching out for women to step into their spiritual anointing. Women are powerful forces in the world, but are we functioning from our great I am, or are we functioning from our flesh, from our culture, from what we think we should be, from what people want us to be? And so the Godly Woman is a for-profit corporation based in Southeast Michigan, but serving the country and the world of women, men, and their families, as well as businesses and organizations, tapping into the great I am for power, perspective, and purpose. Good evening, my brother Konkona. Great to see you. So welcome. If you are with me right now, please like, comment, let me know you're here, share, let other people know that we're having this conversation, and let's talk, because today's conversation is sexuality and culture. Some of you already study with me in my program called Sex and the Spirit. We are having session 6 of Sex and the Spirit this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And my special guest to close out that series is none other than my fabulous husband, Brian Johns. And we're going to be answering questions about our relationship. We're going to be telling our story, the ups, the downs, the whys, the hows. And we're going to be answering questions that the community might have. So if you'd like to do a special drop-in to that class, it is one night only. It is $10, and you're welcome to attend. That's been a 6-week series, but it will not be repeated. It is actually going to become a book and a workbook for y'all to be able to have and study and reflect for yourselves. So we're talking it out today. It's Tuesday. It's Talk It Out Tuesday. We're going to tap the screen over here on TikTok so that we can draw in people. We are broadcasting live today on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, as well as TikTok. Hello, Maddie, over on TikTok. Good to see you. Pardon my sniffles. I'm a little sinusy, I know. So let me ask you this. Regarding sexuality, let me back up. Some of you may have tuned into my radio show last night. We did a pop-up episode of Great I Am Radio, and a gentleman from right here on TikTok was my guest. He goes by Austin Unbridled. I encourage y'all to go and check him out, his channel out here on TikTok. He's sharing his story of detransitioning from his transgender lifestyle. He's a former male to female, transgender male to female, who's detransitioning. He lived as a transgender female for 22 years. He made the transition at 19 years old. Yes, Jackie. Jackie said Austin was amazing. Austin is amazing, and has a very sobering perspective. And, for many of us, especially people who might be out in the world identifying in the heterosexual community, you might not have someone you can talk to and get the real deal story. You might, all you might have is what's on the news and social media to be able to be relating to, and you might have some questions. And there's nothing wrong with having those questions. You're not homophobic, transphobic, judgy, hateful, bigoted. If you have questions, you have questions. Questions come from a place of curiosity, a place of wonder, a place of not knowing, and a desire to know. And I think that it's important that we make room in our culture, in our churches, synagogues, temples, whatever your mosque, whatever you got going on, in our families. We want to make room so that people then have room in themselves. Jackie, you can reach out and see if he's around today and wants to chat a little bit. I don't mind. He'd have to go live on his platform, and then we would co-host. He wouldn't be a guest. He would be a co-host. So just let him know that, so that we're a side-by-side kind of situation. But the people on the rest of the streaming platforms wouldn't see him. No, you know what he would need to do? I'm going to send you a link, Jackie. Man, I'm not sure how to do this. I guess we would just have to do it on TikTok. You can ask him, though. You can ask him. Maybe we can figure out a way to translate into the rest of the platform somehow. But we can't have people asking questions be a problem. It's imperative that we have room to ask questions. It's imperative that we get to say the truth about ourselves. I believe that until we make room in our culture, in our families, in our spirituality, to openly and honestly discuss and inquire about sexuality, we're going to continue to suppress and oppress people in one of the most natural part of themselves, and then wonder why we have things going wrong in our world and culture. Wonder why we've got rape. Wonder why we've got pedophilia. Wonder why we've got corruption. When the answer seems so clear to me. Hey, good morning, Facebook user. I just see good morning. I'll be driving and won't be able to interact. I don't know who that is. I'm sorry. I wish my StreamYard platform told me who people were when they were talking to me. It doesn't always. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. But people are carrying around some pretty heavy stuff regarding sexuality. Many of us have something we've been carrying around since childhood. And if we don't make room for people to unpack this stuff, we literally cause greater individual, therefore global corruption. We are each we are each our own nucleus to the universe, like I'm the center of the universe to me, you're the center of the universe to you. And so if the center of the universe is off, then so is the universe. And human sexuality, at the core of our human development, being something that we are not allowed to talk about, inquire about, make room for, heal from, grow in, become more aware and conscious to, We're just tipping the whole universe over. Art says, I can't change my sexuality. I am a gay Christian man. End of story. Praklau khishla, as my father would say, Art. It finished and it left. That's a wrap, Yenny, in other words. But whether it's your sexual orientation or the experiences we've had sexually. I spoke with a client recently who was estranged from her father her entire life. And then in her adult years ended up in a romantic relationship with her father. It would probably be more appropriate to say a sexual relationship with her father. It wasn't like they really were dating, but it was kind of. AKA period. Exactly. Prekla uchishla is what my dad used to say. It finished. Prekla. It finished. Uchishla. It left. It's done. In other words, there's no keep going, talk about it, negotiate. In our class, Sex and the Spirit, we have talked over the last 5 sessions about the animal, the flesh that we are. We've talked about the spirit that we are, the essence. We've talked about the culture. There's such an implication to our sexuality from our culture. Whether it's the type of body you have, the type of partner you should have, the status, the physicality of those people, of yourself. What sex is appropriate? What sex is not? Sex between whom? You know, in our culture here, what we call pedophilia here in the West is just common day business in other parts of the world. What we call polygamy, we've got like special words for it. You know, if you were to be in Nigeria, it's very common for a man to have multiple wives. If you're in the East, it's very common for a man to have multiple wives. They don't think anything of it because the culture is already set up and in agreement with it. But, you know, we start talking brother husbands and sister wives in America, and by the same token, in some parts of the world, homosexuality isn't even defined. There's not a word for it. Because they don't have it distinguished out of all the other forms of sexuality. There is just sexuality, which is my preference. If I could just, you know, put a vote in, there is simply sexuality. And then there's how you express yours, right? Like there's only one hungry. And then what you eat is because it's you. But we all know hungry. You don't have to explain hungry to people. Just like you don't have to explain hangry to people. I mean, you might have to tell them it's a fusion of 2 words, hungry and angry. But once you let them know that hangry means hungry and angry, people around the world will be like, and I understand that, friend. I get there. Because they're simply hungry. So what is it? Talk to me today. Let me hear from you. What is it in your corner of the world that convinced you the most about what your sexuality could be and should be? Was it your family? Was it culture? Was it religion? What told you what you were and how you should be it? And did you agree? Did you push it back? Did you say, no, I'm not that and you can't make me? Or did you say yes? Did you comply? Have you continued to comply? Does it resonate with you, what you comply with? Are you faking it? Did you at some point stop complying? I was raised in a hyper heterosexual environment. I would go so far as to say homophobic. Not homo hateful. I wasn't raised in an environment where we got to be mean or cruel or judgy or damning. That wasn't the environment I was in. But phobic would be better the word. It's just ignorant, right? Like lack of knowing. And therefore, like, But I was also in an environment where I was molested by 2 uncles and a cousin, unknowingly to my parents. Until I was much later as an adult. I told them. That's another day's conversation. Happy Mama on TikTok says, culture for sure. Making the mistake of reading Cosmopolitan magazine. What a promiscuous influence. I mean, you're not wrong. I was 15 in 1988, and I'm pretty sure every week Cosmo and Glamour had the top 10 ways to make your man's eyes roll back into his head. The 10 things for oral and the 10 things in the bedroom and the 10 things and take this quiz and see if you measure up as sexy enough or measure up as whatever enough. Now, for me, even though I was in what I'm calling a hyper hetero environment, there was also a lot of trauma that was unreconciled for me. And as I went into my teens, I was very promiscuous. 15, 16 through 19, like those teen years, I began promiscuity. And by the time I was in my 20s, as a stand-up comic and being in the work world and traveling, and by that point, I had really not only become promiscuous with men, but also women. And it was, for me, genuinely a function of looking for love in all the wrong places. And where there was affection willing and able to be poured out, I was this broken cup trying to receive it. I think I also had underlying a feeling of, if somebody else can do it, so could I. Like, don't look at me for that kind of moral purity. Y'all weren't worried about moral purity when you were doing it. You weren't worried about moral purity when you were molesting me. So don't worry about what I'm doing. I think I had that sort of vindictive energy to me too. So let me ask you this. We're talking about having our sexuality formed by culture. And in that culture definition, I want to put religion as well. Excuse me. All right, it's time for my aminos. Let's take some supplements. 10 grams of protein per tablet. Look at that, 10 grams of protein per tablet. They will dissolve in my stomach and go to my bloodstream in 23 minutes. It's been part of how I've lost 135 pounds and pray God another 130. All right. I really should have done that about 90 minutes ago. I'm a little off my game today. So my question to you all is, are we creating our own corruption? Are we creating our own corruption by not allowing open discussion, questions, answers, and healing? Are we creating it? Happy Mama on TikTok said one of the main editors actually apologized. I saw the clip for Cosmo's bad influence. Mandy says we were born into corruption. However, we definitely make it worse. Mandy, you're not kidding. We are born into it. We are born into it. How many of you came from families or environments where you could be communicative, where you could ask questions about sex and sexuality and share about what you were going through and growing through? How many of you came into life supported? Anybody? Anybody? Going once? Going twice? Anna on TikTok just said, no. I mean, I know it's not often that I find people who've been supported, but every now and then someone comes my way who this isn't an issue for. And I always feel like they're a little bit of an anomaly. What about religion? How many of you have been formed by, struggled with, or had questions about your sexuality or just sexuality as it relates to religion? That might be one of the most common conversations people have with me. People reaching out to say, listen, I'm gay. Am I going to hell? Because the religious world won't let them be gay. That's one of the most common. Now, I'm not going to speak about other religions. I mean, I could. I know a little bit about a little bit. But I want to speak specifically about the Bible, because in the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament have references. In our Western text, there is direct conversation about homosexuality. But the truth is, in the ancient text, that was not there. That was not there. In the Old Testament, there is phraseology that refers to a man not laying with a male as with a female. But if you go to Leviticus and read that entire chapter, you'll see that the entire chapter is about telling men, and I do mean men, not women, men, that they had to act with a moral compass sexually. They couldn't just be all nilly-willy lusting after people and kidnapping them, taking them and raping them. And there was a corruption. We're talking like half hour past caveman, okay? We're literally talking thousands of years ago. We're talking about a breed of man, an adult human male, okay? We're talking about a breed of man who saw a woman and said, I want that, and then went after it like an object. We're talking about a season of human development and consciousness where men didn't understand that it was by their deposit to a woman that a son or daughter was born. So it was very common in that era of humanity for marriages to end simply because a woman wasn't cranking out a son. She's stubborn. Oh, you got yourself a stubborn one. She's given you 7 daughters. She won't give you a boy, huh? So women could just be abandoned, dropped off somewhere. So we're talking about ignorance, in a word. We're talking about ignorance. And so the Mosaic Law was written to tell people, stop objectifying. Stop objectifying women and men. The other thing that was happening in that culture was sex for the sake of domination. Like a prison. Like in a prison system where there may be people gathered who are not organically, authentically homosexual, but they will use sodomy to dominate, to show their domination. There was a third thing that was happening in that culture, and that was because it was such a sin to look upon a woman and lust, and unless you were going to be with a harlot, which was fornication, a paid sex worker, right? Single men would turn to each other for the release. But this was considered a form of lack of self-control, a form of sexual impurity and immorality. So whether it was objectifying women or men, lusting, whether it and raping and accosting, whether it was an impure act, or whether it was an act because you were lonely and single, whatever it was, that's the conversation of the Old Testament. It was saying, don't just be laying down with people nilly-willy. In the New Testament, it specifically speaks to what was happening in the Hellenistic culture, in the Greco-Roman era of, Alexander the Great to Mark Antony, I believe, is considered the Hellenistic era. And so in that culture in particular, older men were prone to have boys, right? Like little lackeys, little hand servants. And those boys would run errands and serve them and make food and give them baths. And if there was a little they wanted, then they would do that too. Which is why in that New Testament culture of the Hellenistic world, we see Plato, the philosopher, arise and be the father of what's called platonic relationships. Why? Because he was an older man too, and he had boys hanging out with him. When I say boys, I mean like 12 to 20, early 20s, right? And so he had them too, except he wasn't doing anything sexual with them. It was genuinely friendship, mentorship. He was being that big brother, that uncle, that friend, that man mentor that could guide these boys. He was a philosopher. He was out to provoke and build people to be something greater. And so from his example, we have the word platonic. Platonic. But we wouldn't need that word if that culture wasn't sitting with a backdrop of pedophilia. And so what we're really talking about in the New Testament, when we say a man, that's an adult male, that's a full-grown man, and a male, meaning a boy. Because remember, in the East, a boy is not considered to be a man until he's 30. He's got to go through training, development, He's got to have gone through study in temple. He's got to have gone through certain learning. Men, as a matter of fact, you're not even allowed to like speak on religious matters. That's why Jesus was 30 when he started his ministry, because that culture required you to be quiet, even as a male, until you were 30, because that was when you went into your rite of passage to be able to speak as leadership. So what are you hearing? Where does this shift things for you? Where does this make you rethink what you've put together for yourself? Oftentimes in my one-on-one sessions, people say to me, I have something I need to tell. Like I'm dealing with that I need to confess. I need to confess. But there's no place that's safe. And I will say to them, would you like to start here? Would you like to start here in session with me? And they will almost every time say yes. Yes, I need to. And then I hear these things. I hear people say I was molested, I was raped. I hear people say I raped, I molested. I hear people say I had sex with my father. I hear people say I've been cheating on my wife with my kids. I hear people say this. And I genuinely believe until we're ready as a human race to let people start telling the truth, and I mean from the beginning. I mean, when your kid has questions about sex, answer them. Before your child reaches milestones, educate them. When you're in a relationship with someone, talk about likes and dislikes, understand traumas and triggers. When we are finally able to tell the truth and give each other room and not use religion, family tradition, and culture dogmatically browbeating us into despising ourselves and each other. I really believe that anything that is sexually corrupt in this world is because of that. GMC on TikTok says, I love hearing this just as a gay person, even though I already knew it. It's reassuring to hear. Yeah, I don't blame you. Listen, I'm going to tell you something. For myself, I told you in my 20s I had been with women. That was completely inauthentic for me. I'm not a lesbian. I don't play one on TV. It's not authentic for me. Do I find some women beautiful? Yes. Can I say that a woman is attractive? Yes. Do I need to go and be with her? Not necessarily. No, that's not my jam. But it was honest for me at that time because I was just looking for love. I was looking for love in all the wrong places, and I had been exhausted by men. Between the molestation in my childhood and my own promiscuity in my teens and early 20s, it wasn't until I was raped at 29, after my first divorce, that I went and processed with a therapist being molested in my childhood. And it was then that I could see, wow, I was living really fast and loose out of the brokenness and despair. There's a thing that happens with someone when they've been through something and it's not processed, and the corruption of the trauma is just hanging on, where you're so broken in yourself that you don't have a standard. You're so broken in your psyche, in your emotionality, that you don't have a standard. So whether you have that no standard with men, women, divorced, married, it's still the same thing. Oftentimes when I'm working with clients, they're defining boundaries for the first time in their lives. 35, 45, 55, 65, 75-year-old clients that are defining themselves, drawing boundaries, communicating their truth peacefully but firmly. Sometimes they've never done it before. Oftentimes in my sessions with clients, people are telling the truth about experiences they had 40 and 50 years ago. You know, after I was raped in 2002, I went into therapy. Probably needless to say, but I'll say it anyway. I went into therapy, and it was there in therapy for being raped as a 29-year-old woman that I addressed being molested from ages 2 to 11 in my youth. I'd never told it before. I'd never been in a place where I was safe enough in my perception. I was not safe enough and so oftentimes we're looking for a safe space to unpack so that we can stop perpetuating what that trauma brings about. Oftentimes we're hungry to let go of our burden. Thank you, Christina. We're hungry to let go of our burden, desperate to let go of our burden. And yet it seems one and the same with us. But I believe that being able to tell the truth will allow people to be empowered sooner. So if you have a chance, I really invite all of you to visit greatiamradio.com. That is my radio show online. Yesterday, I interviewed Austin. He is here on TikTok as Austin Unbridled, a detransitioning former male to female transgender woman. And he shared his story with us. He shared the psychology of where he came from. And yes, religion had a lot to do with it. Listen, those of us that are all spiritual and love us some God, and we need to be mindful, because our love for God needs to stay in the lane called love. When our love for God somehow translates to hate for people, there's been something corrupted in the conversion factor there. The entire point of sharing a loving relationship with the Creator, the entire point is not to get some free pass backstage when we're out of the skin sack. From spirit you came, to spirit you will return. That, my friends, sadly has been manipulated. It's a given. This, from dirt back to dirt. But who you really are that animates the skin sack, that's going back to spirit. But the whole point, in my take, to have that communion with Creator is to translate and transfer it into communion with each other. Who's got the ability to look up the scripture here? Maybe I can do it. I just don't want to lose my transmission on StreamYard. Remember when Jesus was asked what was the most important commandment? was the most important commandment he was asked? Do you remember what he said? Matthew 22, 37 through 40. In verse 36, Matthew 23:36, he was asked, Teacher, because this was, listen, when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. And one of them who knew the law asked him, testing him, Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Now remember, there are 618 Mosaic laws. That's what the Pharisees and Sadducees were standing in, was Mosaic law. Jesus said to him, Love the Lord God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might and with all your mind. Your might comes from your physical strength, your doingness, that you might. So your soul, your body, your heart, and your mind. Mind, heart, body, soul. So first of all, love. It's a verb. Actively be loving in a loving relationship with God, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Number one. It's a two-part answer, though, because Jesus is funny. This is the greatest and the first commandment. And the second is like to it. Love your neighbor as yourself. That doesn't mean love your neighbor like you love yourself. Some of y'all can't stand yourself, and so you're nasty with your neighbor. Neighbor could be your spouse, your kid, your sibling, your parents, your boss, the lady in the cubicle next to you, someone in the lane to your left, or the cashier at 7-Eleven. Neighbor is someone that is a passerby of you. Love your neighbor as yourself, meaning engage with them now as though they are someone who is going to be a conduit and connection and reflection of God also. In other words, if you know that you're one and the same with God, you're in a dance this way, then you're going to have to realize that other people around you are that also. When I really got 1 John 4:4 says, My beloved children, you are overcomers because greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. When I really got that I am a part and particle of the great I am incarnate for me to use and optimize in my life here, I started looking around and I was like, oh my gosh, Brian and the kids are the great I am. Greater is he that is in them than he that is in the world too. I remember pulling up to a city bus in downtown and looking at this bus full of people and thinking, greater is he that is in each one of them that is in the world too. What? On verse 40, he says, on these two commandments hang the law and the prophets. So the legalism of it, the rules, the codes of conduct are based on this. And so is all of the prophetic teaching and ministering that's been going on. Everything sits on this. And so I'm wondering if that's the answer to giving us access to deal with our sexuality, is if we will first understand that our communion with the Creator and our communion with each other sets balance in place. That's a spiritual context. I wonder how much that would change our sexuality. Do you think if people were really in sync with loving God with all their heart, soul, might, and mind, and honoring the person next to them as the same as themselves, do you think we would still be messing with people about who they're having sex with? Do you think we'd be likely to be molesting our children? Brian and I are going to be going on a blind date, not a blind date, a double date with my brother and his wife to go see the movie Sound of Freedom, which of course is the movie about children and sex trafficking. Something's got to give in our culture, friends. How do we justify in our culture buying and selling children for sexual perversion? How do we get here? How did we get here? How do we get ourselves out of here? I heard someone say recently that we will not end the corruption of human sexuality until fathers stop wanting to have sex with their daughters. Just let that sit with you for a minute. At first, my knee jerk, when I heard it, I was like, dang. And then I was like, well, let's not put it all on that. And then I was like, no, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. In nature, animals at some point stop relating to their offspring as their child. You get to a certain point in the animal kingdom, and it doesn't matter that I gave birth to you. You're another animal now. Now, it's less likely to occur with the females. Not impossible, but less likely. The aggression. Men will kill their own child. They'll occur like another threat. But male and female animals will breed with their offspring. Because it gets to a place where, I'm no longer nursing you. You're no longer on the tit. You're no longer my baby. Then you're another animal in the world. And so in the animal kingdom, family lines don't matter. It doesn't matter that you're my child, my grandchild, my niece, my nephew. That's what was happening in the Old Testament in Leviticus. That's what we see. Codes of conduct for men. Don't have sex with your daughter, your mother, your granddaughter, your niece, your brother's niece, your brother's wife's mother. They had to tell men not to have sex with women in their family. Brandis, what are you asking? Do you think fathers can skip their daughters and go straight for their granddaughters? Are you really asking me if I have that belief? Sometimes I can't tell when people are being snarky or they're real. No, you don't have to mute her. She was asking a legitimate question because she said it happened to her. You don't have to mute her. I want to hear that. Brandis, it's absolutely unacceptable. It's absolutely unacceptable. That's what I mean, though. That's what I mean, because if grandfathers are going for granddaughters, if fathers are going for daughters, then we, at a baseline, culturally, do not have safety. Brandis, that was the story I've shared about myself. I was molested by 2 uncles and a cousin, and it wasn't until my adult years, after being raped by an acquaintance, that I was in therapy for that and started talking about and processing the molestation. And I really felt compelled to talk to my mother about her brother. And when I did, I learned that he had done the same to her when she was a child. And I'm thinking, and you left me alone in a room with this guy? And you would make me hug him when he walked in the door? And you knew he was Chester the molester? And so that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Somebody's not telling the truth somewhere. Somebody's not telling the truth somewhere. My mother said when she was about 6 or 7 years old, and mind you, this would have been about 1949, 1950, that her mother came to her. A woman came to the house and they had a conversation. And then my grandmother went to my mother and in our Aramaic language said, has somebody messed with you? But it's a word messed with, that's got perverted, like sexual activity to it. So she was blatantly asking my mother, anybody molest you? Try something dirty with you? And my mother, now you're just child, right? Shell-shocked, was like, no, everything's good here. No. But that not telling put something in motion. Just as I was molested in my youth and didn't tell. And I wasn't told not to tell, by the way. I know some of y'all have been through situations with somebody and they've said, don't tell, or I'll whatever with you. There wasn't any of that. It was a given. It was a given. So could it be that if we start telling the truth, we could interrupt our cultural perversion? Is our cultural perversion a function of the lies, the masking, the justifications? I thought so too, Brandis. And as I spoke up in my family, I found out that other cousins were molested by this uncle. And I'm thinking, so we just got this dude running through the family tree, plucking fruit? What? And nobody in all of the family told anything? until I was raped and decided I was going to say something? So I invite us, all of us, I invite all of us to let the truth vibe flow. We can't live in our own lies and fog of falsities and expect to live a life of clarity. That's not how it works. You know, when you dress up for Halloween, you really have to put a mask, a costume, so people don't know who you really are. My kids dressed up last Halloween and they had a blast because the costumes they chose, you really didn't know who they were. And they loved it. They were like, we went right up to Uncle Phil and he didn't even know it was us. There's a time and place for masking yourself so that people don't have access to the real you. But if we don't tell the truth about what we are enduring and incurring, we're really setting into place our own corruption and disturbance. Someone on Facebook said, my mother found out what my brother was doing to me and she about killed him. She beat the crap out of him. I pray that your brother got the help that he needed. It is so scary so many years later to reveal this beloved man as a monster. Brandis, if I can be of help to you, please schedule an appointment with me. Listen, y'all, for those of you who might not be familiar, I'm a holistic health practitioner. I'm a purpose coach. I'm an ordained minister of the gospel, and I help people get out of the bondage of trauma. I help people tap into purpose and live with passion and peace. And we each deserve that. We each deserve that. So if I can be helpful, please schedule a meeting. You can go to livinggodspromises.com. livinggodspromises.com. You can schedule a connect call with me. That is a free courtesy call. I'm happy to just do a quick meet and greet with you, answer questions and so forth. Some of you know you're beyond that. You've been hanging out with me for a while, or you've been watching lives or videos or integrating, conversations like this, possibly doing classes, but you haven't done a one-on-one with me yet. You know you're ready. You can just book. You can just click the link in my bio, go to livinggodspromises.com, schedule a session. There are 30 or 60-minute sessions available. And we meet usually via Zoom. If you prefer, it can be a phone call. And we go to work. But I'll tell you, the work is only as good as your honesty. I'm just going to tell you up front. I appreciate all my clients, but I have some clients that spend a lot of money with me and spend way too long getting to the root of their shit because they're busy lying to themselves. Now, sometimes it's because we're scared. There are too many layers. And it's like, I got a baby step through this, Rebecca. Fine. I'll go as slow as you'd like. But other clients are still snowing themselves. I go, how was your week? And they go, great week. Great week. Everything's clipping along. And there were 4 incidents with their children, 2 incidents with their spouses, 1 incident with their bosses, 3 incidents with the neighbors. They're not telling the truth. So I encourage you to reach out for help, whether it's with me or with someone else. But I also encourage you to put a moratorium on snowing yourself, because you're the only one you're convincing. No one else around you is buying it. That's the problem. That's the corruption. And you're the one that deserves to be set free. If you're the one who is suffering, you deserve to be set free. Don't be your own warden and keep yourself in prison by perpetuating deception. And each of us have wounds at play, whether it's mommy wounds or daddy wounds, the feminine wounds or the masculine wounds. So I encourage you to be bold today. I encourage you to tell the truth today. I encourage you so that you'll know yourself as that. For so long as you keep hiding, you're going to know you're a hider. For so long as you keep lying, you're going to keep knowing yourself as a liar. And then you say things like, I'm so sick and tired of how my life has been. Okay. How sick of it are you really? Sick enough to do something about it? Or only sick enough to go, I don't feel good, and fuss about it? There's different levels. You walk around saying, I don't feel good, I don't feel good. And you get to a point of not feeling good where you're like, I need to go to the doctor. I think something's wrong. And then when you get to the doctor and they go, what brought you in today? And you're like, oh, I'm good. I'm good. No, I'm great. What do you mean? What do you mean? That's right. I'm good. I'm good. Okay, well, then that doctor can't help you, friend. Or they can kind of get a read on it. Well, it looks like you're limping. Did you come in because of that limp? Oh, yeah, but I just bumped it. It was nothing, no big deal. It's just, it's just a little sore. So I will admit up front, I am prophetic and highly intuitive. I will also say, I don't know everything. I'm not a know-it-all. I don't have a crystal ball. And it needs your participation. Your healing requires your participation. I look forward to being of service to you, though. Happy to be of service. So thank you for being with me tonight. I look forward to being with you again. I'll be back on tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern for Prophetic Word. If you'd like to receive a prophetic word, come back this evening. I will be on, again, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, as well as TikTok. And don't forget, 8 o'clock tonight, for those of you that are already registered, it's the 90-day transfiguration. We got our next session coming up. Thank you over there on Facebook for the conversation this morning. I appreciate your boldness. And bless you, Denise. See y'all tonight. Have a great day. Peace.